Alright, so I'm back with another video. It probably hasn't seemed so long for you. After all, I did post a video just about a week ago. I think it was the John Wright review, but I actually haven't recorded anything in the last several weeks. I kind of had that one in the can for a little bit. So I've been on vacation. I just returned yesterday after about 18 hours of flying time, and what I came home to is the topic for today, and that is my arrivals. So I did have more than a few, as you can see in this photo. And actually that was supplemented by some Record Store Day pickups as well, because guess what? I didn't attend Record Store Day. I wasn't anywhere near any participating shops, but I went by Criminal Records today, just 3 days actually after Record Store Day, and they had multiple copies of some of the titles that I was after, so it all worked out, and I'm gonna include those in the video as well. So let's dive in. Before we get started, please hit like, the notification bell, subscribe to my channel, and go over to Instagram and follow me at what_can_brown. All right, so I'm gonna address the used titles first, then we're gonna move on to the new ones, the brand new stuff. There's a box set in here, and then we're gonna finish with a couple of those Record Store Day purchases. So the first one I wanna talk about is something that I just posted to Instagram today, so for those of you who follow me will have seen it, but that is Buster Williams's Pinnacle. So this is one of those titles on Muse that I would say is becoming increasingly difficult to get, and the reason why is because it's really fantastic music. So this is Buster Williams' first title as a leader, came out I think in 1975, and one of the reasons why this is so desirable is I think some of the supporting players. Now don't get me wrong, this is very much Buster Williams' own album, but you can't ignore Woody Shaw and Sonny Fortune in the lineup. You also have Billy Hart, you have Onaje Allen Gumbs, Guillermo Franco, Earl Turbinton, wasn't familiar with Turbinton, and yeah, anyway, there's a couple of vocalists too, but fantastic music, really great stuff. This is the sort of thing that I think when you look at it, you probably think, especially because I think Buster Williams was Herbie Hancock's bassist for a little bit, you think that it's going to lean into that fusion stuff. And I'm not really that much of a fusion guy. This is not a fusion album, at least not squarely, or at least not at least in terms of what Herbie Hancock was playing at that time. This is much more, I would say, a mixture of like Miles's electric period and post-bop. There's like some spiritual elements, but in any event, really fantastic music, and highly recommend you check out the whole thing, but especially the opening track, The Hump. So really excited to get this title in. I've never owned a copy in my life, and I've been looking for it for a while. And guess what? This copy happens to be a white label promo. And so that's pretty cool as well. I mean, I wasn't necessarily only looking for the promo, it's just that was the title that, or that was the copy that came up. All right, next one up is by George Murabus. I think that's how you pronounce his name. And the title is called Brazilian Tapestry. This is on the Catalyst label. My guess is a lot of folks have not heard of this or seen it before, or noticed it maybe is the better way to describe it. So I'm kind of reminded when I think about this record, and specifically Catalyst, around January of this year, I made a video about how I was going after labels that were like a little bit under the radar, and I think like Timeless Muse, right, and like Pablo, I'm trying to think of some of the other ones that were on there, but in any event, I was going after certain labels, and I was trying to find titles that were like a little bit under the radar because they were affordable. Well, guess what? I hesitate to announce this, because I think after I made that, I started seeing a lot more people picking up and posting some of the labels, some of the records from the same labels that I was after, and so that kind of like made me think, oh, maybe I shouldn't have told everybody what I was doing. But at the risk of doing that again, Catalyst is another one of those labels that, don't get me wrong, not everything they have is great, and it definitely makes sense to preview everything you can, but they have a ton of titles that are great and that are under the radar, and I'm hoping this is going to be one. I did preview like one track on this, and I thought it was worth it enough for me to spend like, the $10 or whatever it was for this copy. So excited to dig into this. There's actually, the lineup doesn't have that many familiar names in it. Wasn't really familiar with Murabus, who's a piano player, but Michael Howell is on here on guitar. I think he has his own album for Catalyst, if I'm not mistaken, or at least I have an album by Michael Howell. I want to say it's on Catalyst. And then like Willie Colon is on it, but otherwise it's a bunch of folks who I'm not familiar with. So excited to dig into this one a little bit more, and it was an easy decision because it was a cheap record. All right, so next one. It is more and more seldom that I get new Blue Note records in, or like, again, used records. And I actually do have a copy of this already, but this is definitely an upgrade. So check this one out. Looks brand new, and that is because it is still in shrink wrap. Looking at the vinyl, it looks pretty much brand new. So my guess is that it was, seldom played. But this is Hank Mobley's Reach Out. And yeah, this is like in the late 4200 series or 84-200 series. But fantastic lineup, fantastic music on this thing. So you've got Woody Shaw, George Benson, Lamont Johnson, Bob Cranshaw, and Billy Higgins. That is a fantastic sort of late period lineup. And yeah, just really excited to have a even cleaner copy than the one that I already had. You can see here that it's got the original label, which in this case is Liberty. And is this one? Yeah, it's got the Van Gelder stamp. So even though it was late in Blue Note's catalog, it was still mastered by Rudy Van Gelder, and so that's exciting. And so the sound is going to be great. And I think like many people, I'm of the mind lately that anything Woody Shaw is on is worthwhile. And let's be real, you can't ignore the fact that Hank Mobley is the leader on this thing. So anyway, excited to get a really nice upgrade of this copy. All right, next one up is another upgrade, another vintage record, and this is original pressing in this case. This is Booker Irvin's Groovin' High. So this was put out on Prestige. This is in the 7400 series. Later, I suppose, at least in Prestige's catalog than the Fireworks era anyway. So this is like 1966 or so. So who do we have on this? Carmel Jones, Gilda Mahones, Jackie Byard, Richard Davis, and Alan Dawson, and fantastic music. And guess what? Super cool to find a preview copy of this thing. So I mentioned that it was after the after the Fireworks era, and so this one is a Blue Trident. I mentioned that it's an upgrade. I have a copy of this, but mine's in like VG Plus, and this one is just really clean. And I couldn't pass up the that preview copy stamp is pretty enticing as well. So yeah. Anyway, that's that one. All right, so this next one is kind of an interesting one, and this is Duke Pearson's Dedication. So this particular copy was put out on Prestige in about 1970. But it was actually recorded in 1961, and it wasn't originally recorded for Prestige. So what's the deal? Well, as far as I know, despite the fact that Duke Pearson is listed here as the leader, this album was originally recorded with Willie Wilson, I believe a trombonist. Yeah, trombonist. Willie Wilson was supposed to be the leader, and this session it was his session. It was recorded for the Jazz Line label. So Jazz Line was like, just a blip on the radar, not many releases. And this was, it was originally recorded in the Bell Sound Studios, and it was supposed to be put on Jazz Line, but Jazz Line went under, and so that 1961 session was not released. So this technically is not the first pressing, however. The first time, to my knowledge, that this was put out, it was put out for, I want to say it was like the Dutch Fontana label, and I forget the exact year, but it was listed under the leader Freddie Hubbard, so not Willie Wilson and not Duke Pearson, but under Freddie Hubbard, who is in the lineup, and that album was titled Groovy. So that was the first time it was put out, and that edition is quite sought after as well. It's pretty expensive, and it's especially hard to find in the United States. I've never come across a copy. So anyway, the fact that Prestige decided to put this out under the Duke Pearson name, whatever. It's not Willie Wilson, but I still had to get a copy because I really wanted to hear the music, and so I'm excited to dive into this thing. So I mentioned Pearson, Hubbard, Wilson. You also have Pepper Adams, Thomas Howard, and Lex Humphreys in the lineup as well. So, I'm a little bit nervous about this thing because of this text at the top. It says this album has been electronically remastered for stereo, meaning that it was never recorded in stereo. It was recorded in mono, and this is some sort of like stereo fabrication. So I'm a little bit nervous about how this is going to sound, but at the same time, it wasn't going to stop me. In this case, I just really want to hear this music because Duke Pearson at this time period is fantastic. Love his album Hush, right, which is on Jazzline, I think, Jazzline. And then obviously his Blue Note stuff of the time period as well. So, I'm kind of like an anything Duke Pearson kind of person. And so, yeah, it was, like I said, it was kind of an easy decision for me. All All right, so last of the used titles, and got to be honest, I got a little bit caught up in the hype train on this one. So this is Cal Jader's Solar Heat. So I've seen a number of people over the years posting it to Instagram and referencing that it's such a great title, and I've just been I haven't necessarily believed it. And that's because I don't really like Jader's work of this time period. I think if anything, I prefer his like very early stuff on fantasy. And I just I thought it was possible this is going to be too commercial, and I just kind of ignored it for a while. And this copy showed up or popped up on online, and I pulled the trigger because it was super cheap. And I confess I still haven't listened to it. So we are going to find out whether the hype is deserved or whether people just like the cover. All right, so let me run through 4 brand new releases that I had come in. Haven't even opened these yet. So I don't know. I really don't like to be the person that just holds up records. It doesn't say anything about them, but I don't do that often, and so hopefully y'all can forgive me that I do a little bit of that this time. So some of these I have heard though, and so I probably will have something to say. So the first one that probably is obvious, I think everybody knew that I was going to try to grab this, and that is the OJC or Original Jazz Classics release of Bill Evans' Sunday at the Village Vanguard. Now, maybe a year ago, or maybe it was early in 2023, I picked up that Analog Productions 45 RPM Mammoth box set. Very happy with it, by the way, and very quickly after picking it up, OJC announced that they were putting out Waltz for Debbie. And so I grabbed that one too, knowing that I wasn't going to keep them all, and I made a video about this. Already made a video, a shootout comparison, and my conclusion was that the AP version was better. And there's a lot of people that are saying, oh, well, clearly that's going to be the case because it's at 45 RPM. But that doesn't prove to be the case every time. And so I like the idea of doing these shootouts. I am going to do a shootout of this. Guess what? I also have an original pressing of this thing. I think I have an original mono. So I am going to do a shootout and determine once again whether the Original Jazz Classics edition of this particular title is better than the Analog Productions. And I'll probably still keep that Analog Productions box set. I'm not going to go and like break it up and sell off one of the copies. But the question will be whether this one is better. And I think that'll be helpful or important to know. And this is also a title that was supposed to be put out, in like August or something, and it kept getting pushed. They said it was going to be like 1st September, then October, then they just pushed it to, whatever month we're in now, November still. So yeah, finally came in, and independent of a shootout, I'm just really excited to hear what this one is going to sound like. All right. So that's that one. The next one is a little bit of a bizarre one, and I wouldn't have known this album existed if Impex didn't decide to reissue it. And that is Bud Shank's Barefoot Adventure, which is a soundtrack. I'm not familiar with the movie. It is probably a terrible movie, but who knows? The thing is that I really like Bud Shank. He was doing a lot of work for Pacific and World Pacific at this time period, and maybe even more importantly than Bud Shank, Carmel Jones is in this. You also have Bob Cooper, Dennis Budimir, Gary Peacock, and Shelly Mann are also all in this thing. And the fact that Impex prioritized this for a release is just so bizarre to me because, again, never heard of the soundtrack, never heard the movie. And it's Bud Shank. Who would have thought that Impex would attempt this one? But anyway, here it is. And you know it's going to sound good because Impex can almost do no wrong. I have no reason to think that. I don't think they've done any wrong. But anyway, also mastered by Kevin Gray from the original Analog Masters, 180 gram. So there's, a lot of opportunity for this one to be fantastic, and I can't wait to dive in, and I've barely seen anybody post about it or talk about it. So maybe that's because I got duped, or maybe everybody else has missed it. All right, so the next brand new title that I got in is one I've referenced in terms of releases that I was looking forward to later in the year, and it finally was delivered, and that is Tomas, or I think it's probably Tomas Fujiwara, and the title I believe is called just Pith, P-I-T-H, yeah, just Pith. So I previewed this thing. I previewed this thing on Bandcamp, and that is the reason why I decided to pull the trigger on it. So this is what it looks like. Go over to Bandcamp and maybe preview it yourself and decide if you want to pick it up. But basically, Fujiwara, he's a drummer. You also have a cellist and a vibraphonist here. That is an interesting trio. Hopefully that's enough to entice folks to want to check it out. I say hopefully because I get passionate about some of this music by new artists, and I want others to like them too, because then they'll release more music later, right? All right, the next one is one that I drug my heels on a little bit in terms of ordering. So I know that other people got this in, but I decided to finally pick this up. So this is J-Jazz, Deep Modern Jazz from Japan, Volume 4. I've not picked up the other volumes. Basically what this is the label BBE, or Barely Breaking Even, has a J-Jazz, or Japanese Jazz series, and I buy every title that they put out, except for these volumes. And the main reason so far, I think, has been because they oftentimes release whole albums based on some of the individual tracks that are in these compilations. And so I'm like, why do I need this when I know that I'm going to get the albums once they come out? That hasn't proven to be universally the case that they release albums for every single one, I don't think. So anyway, I decided to pick this up. Everyone was talking about how great it was, and so I thought that I would pull the trigger as well. What to say about this other than that it's multi-disc? How many discs is this? This could be like 3 discs or something. You'd expect me to know these things, but I'm actually not sure. It just feels, yeah, it's okay. So it's 3 discs. I was going to say it feels heavy. Might as well look at the back, right? And yeah, just a variety of artists, some that I'm familiar with and some that I'm not. And so I really like diving into this kind of thing and hearing music that I'm not aware of. Maybe it'll cause me to want to seek out some of the original pressings that make up this compilation. All right, so we've covered the used stuff. We've covered just the kind of standard new releases, and we still have a box set. And then we have Record Store Day. Only 2 titles from Record Store Day, but still excited about them. So let's talk about that box set first. And I think a lot of people thought that I was going to pick this up, and I finally did because I kind of got it for a good deal. So what is this? It's Miles Davis, The Electric Years. This is put out in the VMP, or Vinyl Me Please, anthology series. Again, it is quite expensive. However, there's a really good coupon code, and so I didn't have to spend as much. And no, wait, I couldn't use my coupon code and my store credit at the same time, and so I ended up having to just use the coupon code. Anyway, this thing is massive, and I'm not going to unbox it in this video because you know me, I'm going to do a whole separate video on this box set, and I'm going to talk about how the titles compare to the originals, because I think in every situation, I have an original pressing. In a Silent Way, Bitches Brew, tribute to Jack Johnson, Live Evil. I don't know if I have Live Evil. I might. I'm going to have to check. On the Corner, Big Fun, and Get Up With It have all of those as well. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be a very interesting comparison. I know there's a lot of people who are all in on the, this thing is so heavy, who are all in on the MoFi editions of some of this stuff, and there's a lot of interest in comparing how MoFi sounds compared to this. I have owned In a Silent Way MoFi, and I believe I've sold it already just because I liked the original better. So what I'm not going to be able to do really is compare each of these to MoFi, which I know is this feels like has been the subject of a lot of shootouts. I'm just going to compare it to the original pressing, and then even just talk about how it stands on its own, whether it sounds good, whether it's my preferable way to hear the music, that kind of thing. I've heard a lot of good press about this album, a lot of great reviews, and so I'm excited to dive into that. But again, it's going to have to be a whole separate video. So I'll do an unboxing, I'll do a comparison, and that'll be forthcoming. So the last 2 that I'm going to leave you with are Record Store Day purchases. So I made a Record Store Day sort of jazz preview video a number of weeks ago leading up to Record Store Day, and I referenced all the titles that I was excited to get. So guess what? Today, after work, popped into Criminal Records, which is here in Atlanta, and thought, maybe I'll check out and see if they have anything at all left over. And guess what? They had like everything left over. And I asked them, actually, I said, was it a good Record Store Day? They said, way better than last year. They said it went great. It just seemed like people weren't going after the jazz titles, or maybe they got too many of them. So I basically had the option to pick up whatever I wanted. So they had the Les McCann, they had Charles Mingus, They had the Marion Brown. They had the Wes Montgomery. What else did they have? Because they basically had they had Chet Baker. Did I say him already? They had Ahmad Jamal. Like everything that I was looking for to see if they still had multiple copies. So if anybody here in Atlanta wants to go buy Criminal, find out what they have left over from Record Store Day, you definitely should, because I was like, why get up early in order to do this? I mean, I was out of the country anyway, but like, why get up when I can just do this 3 days later? I mean, not really. I mean, like, I get the hype of the day and everything. It's just that in this case, it kind of worked out for me. So, all right, so the first one that I picked up is Wes Montgomery, Wynton Kelly Trio. I mentioned in my preview that this is one of the titles that I was most looking forward to because I absolutely love Wes Montgomery. Can't wait to get my Craft, that triple LP Full House thing in, which I believe is in transit. But yeah, this is titled Maximum Swing, the unissued 1965 half-note recordings. It's a 3 LP, 180 gram box set. It's mastered by Bernie Grunman. The one thing that I've heard about this title, and it's numbered. The one thing I've heard about this title is that this is like not necessarily best sound quality, and it's not their fault. It's not Resonance's fault. It's because the source material, I think it was like radio broadcasts, like the audio was put out on the radio. So I'm going to be really interested to hear how this sounds, but I just couldn't shy away from the opportunity to hear more Wes Montgomery, because this time period, like 1965, I just think it could be really good stuff. And so the other title that I picked up is the Marion Brown and Leo Smith. Now, this is a, so Creative Improvisation and Ensemble. This is a reissue, so this has been put out before, and I don't think that the original is particularly difficult to get a hold of. It's just that, I don't know, like they haven't had another reissue of this, and the idea of getting it like brand new. It was pressed at Palace, which I think for the most part has been, consistent. It's on red vinyl, which, I don't really need the red vinyl, but I just thought it was really interesting to have a Marion Brown title on Record Store Day. And I love Marion Brown, and I just think this is going to be great. And it's like a duet format, right? So it's like Marion Brown and Leo Smith, and I just think it's going to be really, really interesting. So I'm excited to dive into this title as well. All right, so that's it. You may ask the question if in any given like period of time, whatever that was, 10 days that I was gone, if that's how many records that I have come in. And the answer is no. It just so happened that there was a lot in transit. I don't normally have like massive box sets coming in. So it was a little bit unusual, I'd say, to come home and have that many titles sitting on the doorstep, but that's kind of just how it ended up this time. So anyway, yeah, just kind of wanted to share again some of the stuff that I got in, and those Record Store Day releases. We are almost in December, and I've got a ton of video ideas, and I got it in my head that I want to hit my 100th video before the end of the calendar year. So probably going to be a pretty good pace of new videos coming up. So stay tuned. Again, hit subscribe, and yeah, I guess I'll see you next time.